What is it you pray for?
Clive Barker's reinvention of Hellraiser has just dropped on Hulu. We're going to give you our thoughts and a review. We just got done watching it together. And to be honest, this movie didn't quite hit the mark for me personally. I'm a huge fan of the classic Hellraiser movies. I think they invented a certain type of horror, gratuitous. It was amazing. And this movie tries to take that and enhance it in some way that I feel like they kind of bogged it down. They took what was glorious about the classic Hellraiser and kind of complicated it in a way, like forcing a certain amount of kills and different types of configurations with the box. It had little doses of greatness sprinkled throughout where it was like, oh, this is a cool idea. And then there was other times that fell flat on its face for me.
I think they took a really big swing, which I always respect. I think it's really cool to try to expand upon something. I think honestly, I would have enjoyed it more had I not gone into it such a large Hellraiser fan. I think that's the big thing for me. I don't want to call the movie bad because I don't necessarily think that's true. I just think maybe it just wasn't what I was looking for. I loved how well they used practical effects. I actually did love how all the cenobites looked. I thought the kills were brutal, and and that kind of scratched the itch in my brain for a Hellraiser that I've had for quite some time. But beyond that, I just felt like, again, not that it was a bad film, just really just wasn't for me. Not what I went into that movie hoping for.
I didn't like it. I feel like the kills or the gruesome scenes kind of carry the movie for me. And I haven't seen the other Hellraiser, so I don't really have any like template to go off of or anything to like really compare it to. But I just felt like it was doing a lot with the book and the storyline and trying to summon the Leviathan and having Vought in the basement the whole time and he was working with Trevor. I just felt like it was a lot of I just felt like it was a cop out.
I think the main character is kind of the hard part for this movie for me. I think she acted it well. I just think the main character was written in a way that I'm not supporting her. There's no part in the first three-fourths of this movie that I'm like rooting for her to succeed. I'm questioning everything that they do. Like, why the fuck have you not gotten rid of it yet? Why is it after four people have died that you're just now considering to throw this box away? Overall, the main character, which in every movie the main character is what brings the story and the train along, she was the hardest part for me because I didn't understand what her motive was specifically other than just being so curious about the box when any normal person would have been the box is out of here. And then I almost wish the story was more about Trevor. I wish we knew about the Trevor and the Vought guy's deal going into it and that driving the story along where maybe she did want to get rid of the box and he's like, no, we got to keep going. It would have made a lot more sense if he was kind of driving the story along and she was kind of questioning it, like, why do I have to keep, like, I want to get rid of the box. He's like, no, we have to keep going. And then that kind of goes back into the configuration, like forcing people to, or forcing Riley to kill multiple people or sacrificing them. The first time that you saw that happen, she was on drugs, so I could see why maybe she didn't immediately snap into it. But after like the second one, I'm done. I'm done. So the question that I have with the story is like, it's like they didn't have a solid story to go off of in the beginning, and they just like wrapped a story around cool kills.
The main character, Riley, was tough for me too. Not only was it difficult for me to root for her, but I also had a problem. I had a difficulty rooting against her. I didn't want to see her fail. It just kind of felt like she was so for me. And I think that's just because they didn't really give us a lot to go off of. I think they gave us some like insights to her life and personality, but even those fell a little flat for me. I just didn't find myself caring about her. Yeah, I
Well,
agree that Trevor and Voight would have been a much more interesting dynamic to explore story wise, and the kind of power that Voight could potentially have over Trevor, be it financially or otherwise, would be much better vehicle, I think, narratively speaking, to like why he actually has to continue. Whereas Riley, I mean, there's kind of like the hollow notion of her getting her brother back, but even then, I don't think there was enough between them for us to really believe that or care enough, for that. And I don't even think that that intention becomes like really concrete until the second half of the movie. And by that point, I think a few of us have kind of checked out story wise. I agree with what you said about felt like the story was framed around the kills itself, but just a little different. I think it was framed around the kills, but I also think it's almost as if they set out to expand the mythology and thought nothing of how they were going to do so.
I feel like the runtime is also a big thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to like. This is the longest Hellraiser movie, and every other Hellraiser is usually rocking that an hour and 30 minutes. It's a real tight story usually. Like the last half of this movie is what drags. Also, they have multiple kills off screen, and that is so non Hellraiser that
Yeah.
it like hurt my feelings almost. Where it's like you could have had two really badass kills and you just passed over him with the off-screen kill. Like that's like horror movie 101 laziness. Like you looks like you had a pretty awesome budget. It's like they were trying really hard to do the Hellraiser series justice, but it didn't have the soul of Hellraiser. It's like feels like a shell of the story. Like a really big fan of Hellraiser made this movie. I will say it is hard to do a reboot of something and try to make it different. And at least they did try to make it different. We do appreciate them trying that, but I feel like there would have been a better way to reel it in, or at least the different levels of the cube really only stood out to me as we have to have more than 2 kills. We have to have 3 kills. And because of that, the framing of the movie being around all the kills and Riley not even like she accidentally sacrifices multiple people.
I think Riley stumbling around sacrificing people is one of the things I have most of a problem with. I think throughout the movie is just how I would have been much more interested in someone who actually wants to do all of these things with the intention of getting her brother back and is acting very selfishly as a result. That would have been more interesting to me. I don't really find myself caring too much about Voight at that point. I don't care about Riley. And so as a result, that last 30 minutes, it was kind of like, what are we doing? If nothing scary is happening, then what are we doing here? Which is kind of how I felt throughout the entire film. If nothing scary or gruesome is on screen, I don't really necessarily want to be here.
I think this movie is going to be really forgettable. I think a huge problem with this being forgettable is it's on Hulu exclusively. If you're not already a Hellraiser fan, you're probably not going to check it out. So if we're going to score this one, unfortunately, I'm going to go a little low with a 5 out of 10. It's not my favorite Hellraiser movie. It wasn't a bad movie, but I just don't think that really it was necessary. I mean, you have to think the past like 3 or 4 or 5 Hellraiser movies have been like straight to DVD. I think the first 2 or 3 were really like the ones that were the Holy Trinity. Like that's what held the franchise up. And I just don't know if this movie would needed to be made.
I'm gonna go a 6 out of 10. I do not hate this movie. Um, I thought their intentions were noble. I just don't think it was executed in the best way. And I think most importantly, I chalk this up as a movie that's just not for me. Just not what I came for. Not what I really thought I was going to get. Because I went into this completely blind, no trailers or anything like that, really. No idea of what they were going to try to do with this one. So I think I came in with, even though my expectations were low upon how much I'd enjoy the movie, I did think I was going to be getting a very specific type of Hellraiser movie that I'm accustomed to. So I think maybe I just came into it wanting something different than what it was trying to give. So definitely think it's bad, just not for me.
I'll give it a 4 out of 10. I feel like they were trying to make something and they end up making something completely different. It's a long horror movie. And when there was about 40 minutes left, we were talking. I was like, man, there's 45 minutes left in this movie. That's a whole nother movie. Like, what else can be done? And then the last 30 minutes is just, I don't know. I felt like it was a little irrelevant.
We'd love for you to share your thoughts on Hellraiser, though. It could be a divisive movie. People could love it. People could hate it. But here at the Dork Side, it's got about an average of a 5 out of 10. Not the worst movie you could see. Definitely not a offensive sequel or reboot or whatever it could be. If you made it this far in the video, go ahead and hit it with a like. And if you're new to the Dork Side, go ahead and subscribe. We always try to keep these honest reviews for you guys, so we'll always try to steer you in the right direction. And we might have a few special Halloween videos coming out soon, such as our horror movie survival tier list, maybe a few commentary tracks if you're interested in something like that. So if you're new here, subscribe. And if you're a regular viewer, go ahead and hit that bell so you don't miss anything in the future. And until the next time, guys, peace.